Hi, welcome to all of you from UK, from Kuala Lumpur, from Portugal, from California, from North Carolina. Thank you for coming today. And Angela is going to help me with any breakouts that we have. And so first of all, I want to welcome some newcomers to our group. So in order to just set a little scene, thank you. Hi, Curtis. I forgot to say hello to Curtis, who's sitting there. He's coming in from Canada. One of the reasons I mentioned where we're all coming from is that we really want to make this a global conversation. Hi, Kate, who's in England. All of you know me. You don't always know each other, but this is a place where we explore real synergy to look at how we create. And I put it into the words of a life worth living for. I hope that is something we can all hold some sentiment towards. And I'm going to start by sharing my screen and exploring a few ideas. And then within the hour, we will look at going into some breakout groups to discuss various aspects of where we are in our research and also where we want to go to and where we want to help transition the world to a better, fairer, more equal, more balanced, more harmonious, more delightful, more healthy, greater experience for all of us. Our focus is always on real synergy between men and women. That is our particular focus. And I'd like to share my screen and hang on. There I'm going, and where is my what's happened to my PowerPoint? Sorry a minute, let me just find this. I had my PowerPoint on the screen and then it disappeared. So let me just go into my share now. Apologies. There we are. What I'd like to do, and please, if you want to take any notes, I'd be delighted that as well. I'd like to introduce you to a few ideas, and I hope you like. Can you see my screen now, everybody?
Yes.
I love this heart because I feel that this is what it's all about, creating a new narrative between men and women to build a future worth living for. And I'd like to introduce you to a few of us who are here on the call. There's Dawn, myself, Tami couldn't make it today, Angela in the middle, Adolfo, you notice with his wolf, Philip, and Curtis. Alison can't make it today because she is going for a film in which she's going, a movie, which she's going to be a cop. So think about her, she's an actress. This is my research team, and we have been looking at all the information that we've been gathering over the last 9 months. I don't want to present all of it today, but I want to present some of the snippets so we understand where we're going. And some of our basic discoveries, you all know, you're all wise, intelligent, willing, open-minded individuals. I know that because I know and I've talked to each one of you. Men and women are different. This is no surprise. But one of the basic discoveries is our mindset, our core mindset around men are very either or, task focused, women are very and. So in a world where we're going to create something of synergy, which is coming together, we got to realize where we are coming from as individuals. So men are not all the same. We have some delightful men on the call today, and you're not all the same. We look at what is the masculine and feminine energy that comes together from different types of men, but of course, from different types of women. We're not all the same. And our energy is feminine and masculine as well. And I stress there that it's about energy. This is what we've discovered in our 9 months of meetings, talking to men and women of different cultures, different ages, different diversities, different colors, different gender orientations. Our study is about core behavior. as we all know, the world is very different today than it was a year ago. It's divided, it's distressed. We've got our pandemic situation. And to create a future worth living for, our belief is that it's about equality, equity, balance, diversity. Viva la différence. I said that in a very bad French accent. Sorry about that, guys and girls. But it does take two to tango and a whole dance troupe to be the chorus line. And this is about the individual and the collective. It's about going from mindset to mind flow. And it's about conflict to collaboration. And we, and I mean that by every single individual, both on this call and in the world, impacts everything. We now have a situation where life at work is at home, and at work, it's everywhere. So one of the things I want to share with you is that we always work with this value creation. For those of you who haven't been on the call before, the essence of what we do is to get to know ourselves, but the collective comes when we tune into others. When we tune into others, we can create the new narrative. Now, what does that mean? Surely you're saying to yourself, well, we're all wise, we know what we're about. But I want to give you an illustration, and it's one of my favorite aspects is it's about shining our light. So the I in each one of you is absolutely the most critical part, but the you is everybody else, and the we is all of us together. Now, I want you to think about the lighthouse, because I want you to see yourself as a lighthouse. Each one of us, we are in a sea of troubled times. When the seas are tranquil and weather is fair, we may not feel the need for a lighthouse keeper, but as the storm approaches, we need to batten down the hatches. And I love this illustration because this illustrates the meaning for me of why we, each one of us, contribute to what we're doing here. You realize when the storm comes round, the keeper of the lighthouse has been there all the time, i.e. you. How do we discover about ourselves, but also make sure that we understand other people? I want to share the basic map that I work with and that I've shared with all of you, because this is relevant to conversations that we need to have. If we're agreed that the world is quite divided, we haven't got equality yet, we haven't got fair conversations, then we need to go to the basic. And the basic is that we're men and we're women, but not all men are the same, remember, or not all women are the same. So what I discovered was that if we put us onto a 360-degree conversational baseline, and we're all wise, what we need to work out is, even in our wisdom, how do we hear each other differently? And how do we listen to each other differently? And this is a key point. Do we hear with our heart, or do we listen with our heart? I think, and we look into this in our breakout, we hear with our mind and our ears, but we listen with our heart. And we listen in different ways. So if we use our logic, our, what I'd like to call here, our masculine mind, we can also use our feminine mind in other situations. So this is going from logic to emotion. And this is one of our seeming battles in the world of understanding differences. So when we look at the differences, we look at different types of men and different types of women, but they're around the core. So if men are going either or and women are going and, can we understand that combination when it comes to conversation? So what we've done is to introduce archetypes, and there's 4 archetypes that I want to share with you, and we have those present on the call. Some of you know who you are. I don't mean you don't know who you are, but we've already explored some ideas here. But what's important is, how do we have conversations? So if men are going either or, this is the task, we need to get it done. And women are saying, yeah, we want to get it done, but it's and. What we find is that we see each other differently. And I want to share one of the first pieces of research that we did, and I'm not going to look at all these words, but some of you were on these calls we actually asked men and women how they saw each other. And I'm just going to note a couple of things. That women talking about women and men talking about women, the word nurturing and nurturer came up only on those two columns. It didn't appear anywhere on the men's column. So when we looked at women talking about men and men talking about men, so this is self on self and self on others, we saw different words, but there were some words around protector, provider. I can send this slide to any of you who want to study it more, but the whole point of this is that we had a conversation in one of our sessions about the structure that men bring and the flow that women bring. Now, the combination is what is really important. So generally, we don't communicate the same, even if we desire the same values. And this is one of the key parts of our research, is that we all desire a life worth living. We all want love, we want connection, we want collaboration, but we do it in different ways. And that is the nub of having a new narrative. The why might be the same, but the how to do things different. And that's where we can get into very difficult conversations sometimes. So we've designed these archetypes, which we want to explore with you further. So our differences add versatility, diversity, creativity. It's the unique flavor. But very often in the world, we get division over differences because they appear difficult. So one of the things is we designed these archetypes. And as I'm talking, those of you who know what archetype you are, but those who are new to the call, think about where you feel drawn to. And I want to stop the share in a minute and ask my research team to share a little idea or two about their own archetype. The ruler and the philosopher are different shades of men. The ruler is more masculine-minded, the philosopher is more feminine-minded. The magician and the sovereign are female. The magician is more masculine-minded, sovereign is more feminine-minded. Yes? And I'm just going to stop the share because I would like to invite Curtis first to just share a one sentence about what it means to be a philosopher.
You asked a philosopher to have one sentence?
You walked right into that one, Polly, and I agree. I concur with the man.
Well,
Can a sentence be just a string of laughter?
there you are, you see, it's the softness of the philosopher. What is it to be a philosopher leader?
It's actually, it's heartwarming, it's confusing, it's frustrating, it's fulfilling, and it's powerful.
And it's powerful. Thank you. So Philip, what is it like to be a ruler leader?
It's fine when everyone does what I need them to do. Not so good when they have their own views on life. When I'm functioning as a fully round person and not totally in my then as a ruler and a leader, I show clear direction and support everyone in order to get them where I need them to be.
Okay. So for other men on the call who may be new to this or not new to this, to think about where you might be in either of those roles. And I'll come back to Adolfo later, but I want to ask Dawn, what is it like to be a sovereign leader as a woman?
It's all embracing, and every aspect of my life is considered, and I consider every aspect of everybody's lives who I come into contact with. And I'm caring. That's borne out by the professions that I've chosen to engage in. I'm curious. I believe there's multiple answers to a single question, and we'll go searching for it. So fundamentally, I'm a researcher and looking for answers to questions.
Okay. And Angela, what is different if you are a magician leader?
In my experience, is really bringing together the best of both worlds, of both energies, the masculine and the feminine. When I am in my masculine, I definitely get things done. When I am in a not in a stressful situation, that's where really that energy comes out at the best of me, of really bringing people together, but with a direction, with a purpose, and getting things done under stress. So going into kind of the downside of that lack of balance is a little bit more directive that it should be, of, you know, this is my way, and really comes out in a shadow side, if you may. But yeah, so not really, like Dawn said, not very focused about the collective necessarily, more on that mission, but still with a, you know, an open heart and an open mind.
Thank you. Thank you. So there's some personal insights. And Adolfo, who's the other person on our research team, who I believe kind of, you feel you fit between the ruler and the philosopher, I believe.
No, yeah, I'm pretty much a philosopher. I like Curtis's description of how it feels like. That's why I also exploded in laughter and felt it appropriate to unmute. Angela mentioned it, and I think it feels good to embody what she just said. I am a mix of the masculine and the feminine, right? I look at my body and I'm pretty clearly masculine or male, if you will. And so there's energy that is corresponding to masculine because of the body that I live in. Like there's no moving away from that. And so it's good to explore. But there's also a substantial amount of creative flow and feminine energy that I've been allowed to own, you know, possibly because of the women that I grew up with. And so sort of the demand of the type of masculine by women, such as the ones present in this room, allows men like me and hopefully others in this room to also elevate to a more precise, more providing all of those good defining words that both men and women see in masculinity. So yeah, powerful.
Thank you. So I think, again, for those of you listening as well, listen to the words that I used. I'm very acutely aware of this, the words that we use. For me, Adolfo was explaining a really keen balance between the ruler and the philosopher. So the range, remember on the diagram, that the masculine and feminine is energy, not sexuality. It's energy around the male-female biology, which we're looking at for core behavior. So if the male is more task-focused and saying either or, we need to get this done in this way, the woman might appear to be saying the same things, but she's saying, well, can we do this and this and this and this? And we had this very clearly on I think it was our March session, where irregardless of the content, the feedback from the men was, well, we were looking at this or this or this or this or this or this. And everything in the woman's session was, we were looking at this and this and this and this. And it's that sounds subtle, but it's not. It's fundamental to addressing how we go forward. So let me just take a look at, so we've got these archetypes, and those of you who are on the call, I want you to, because when we go into a breakout, we want you to choose your biology and your energy. So if you're male, you will be put in a male breakout group and a female in a female breakout. Within that, try and understand where you are in terms of ruler, philosopher, or magician, sovereign in the conversation. As we look at, oops, trying to get my, I'm just giving you 4 statements that you can think about when we look at these characters, and you may agree with me or not agree with me, and my team haven't seen these yet, so I will share them. The ruler is the masculine-minded male, the action man, short on conversation, prefers bullet points, knows his mind and tells you so. Do not overtalk him and reply in short sentences. Yes, Philip agrees, that's great. The philosopher, the feminine-minded, intuitive male, the thinker, the feeler, sensitive and wordy man. I mean that kindly. He loves conversation and can be an introvert, extrovert. Do not tell him to be macho. Just applaud his sensitivity and how he values people. The magician is the masculine-minded female, the logical female, the creator, collaborator, and ideas maker, connector. Do not tell her to be soft or attempt to sweet talk her, honor her mind. Those of you who know me will laugh about that one, I know. And the sovereign is the feminine-minded female, the sensitive nurturer, relational creator, feeds her people with love. Do not tell her to toughen up, but listen to her stories and honor her territory. Now remember, as women, we can be a mixture of both types. As men, we can be a mixture of both types. But where is our preference? Because it's in our preference that if we look at the dark side, what happens on the dark side? Before I show you this slide, I want to share a story. And I read this in a book, it wasn't mine. The story of somebody under the light of a lampshade in a dark alleyway, and they're looking for something on the ground. And a passerby stops and says, "Can I help you? What are you looking for?" "I'm looking for my key." And they look in the light to find the key and they can't find it. And the passerby eventually says, "Where did you lose your key?" And the guy says, "Over there in the shadow." "Oh, why are you not looking in the shadow?" "Because I can't see in the shadow." So unless we look at the dark side, which we know is happening in the world, we have lots of mixed messages. Women in the boardroom, where are they? Should they be at home? What's happening in remote working? Are men trying to survive? Are they too tough? Where do our conversations fail? Do we blame others? Who's in charge? And this big one, you know, we want to look at this now is, how do we feel when we're not heard? And remember, we hear with our head and we listen with our heart. So do you make assumptions? Do you start setting expectations and everything falls short? If you're a certain archetype, do you deal with that in a different way to another archetype? You may believe the world should be only as you see it. Can you listen to other people and really walk a mile in somebody else's moccasins? Do you disregard the space between you and others? And of course, what we desire is to get to this magical outcome of really listening. So before we go into our breakout, I want to give you an illustration that my team brought together. The lighthouse is you. Do you know your identity? Do you feel? What are your perceptions? What maybe is blinding you to the perception of another archetype in your group? How do you use your energy? How do you build relationships? Is it with love? How do you communicate? How do you see? And I don't mean literally with your eyes, but with your third eye. How do you visualize and respect all of humanity? And how do we really get to real synergy? Then real synergy has to respect the I in you, the you in others, and the we in all of us. Yeah? And the idea is to create a magical conversation which has no judgment, no anger, and no coercion, and that we actually look with an open mind. So there's a lot in this illustration, but what I want you to really feel about as you go into the breakout room is, how is my lighthouse? How solid am I in understanding? And those of you who know chakras will recognize the colors relate to chakras, and we'll go into that in more detail as we develop this research. So in the breakout group, and I'm going to ask Angela if we can put all the men in one room and all the women in the other room for 10 minutes. And I wanted you to look at, what do you feel when you're not heard? So the main question is what you're looking at. What do you feel when you're not heard? Are you really listening? And you may pick one of these words, or you may look at your own. So as men, I want you to ask, what do you feel when you're not heard? And to reflect on whether you're a real ruler or a philosopher. And for the women, what do you feel when you're not heard, as a magician or a sovereign?
You're on mute.
Oh, sorry, I was trying to unmute it. Okay, welcome back, all of you. Hope you notice that I'm sitting at the top of my lighthouse. Do you like my backdrop? Okay, I'd like to ask the men what came up in your group. Who would like to review from the men's group?
I'll go ahead and review since I'm part of the research team. So it was a good badge to wear and honor. So we managed to get 2 words, you're not listening. So there may be a response / reaction to not being listened to or heard, but the emotion is a combination of feeling disrespect, right? Dishonoring my contribution to the conversation, and literally being, not feeling, being invisible, because your speech comes out and it echoes into deaf ears. And as men, it feels like something you really want to go, all right, so I think I should breathe a little deeper and be a little louder, and then you deal. So that disrespect and invisibility could be a driving force. We discussed the fact that men, with this driving force, can take the not being heard to then, go look for a taller soapbox and use that effectively to then be heard. So.
Okay, thank you. That's fascinating, the disrespected and invisible. I'm going to ask another question in a minute, but I was going to ask Inga, could you just share what we talked about in the women's group?
Oh yeah, too many things. But the last thing we talked about where you get stuck in a lighthouse. We talked about whether you often experience this not being listened to, which was interesting. Which I thought how Dawn said, when you nurture relationships, you typically do get listened to. And the last bit where I'm thinking you might want me to share, you asked about if it scares people, if you, I can't remember, whether you sometimes scare people. And I said, yeah, I have had that feedback that, someone saying to me, you do realize that all men who work in our department are scared of you, which really surprised me. And it has really stuck with me, that conversation, because I couldn't understand why. And that me being myself scares people was also, I thought clearly I'm doing something that isn't to type, which makes people scared of me. I'm somehow maybe too strong. I am too involved, too engaged, too much of something that people are scared of me.
And that was interesting, because we were just with the words that came up in our forum. There was we felt when we're not heard that we got very frustrated, and there was words like anger. So women were actually getting angry, but maybe not necessarily sharing that. And the idea that we've been told, some of us, when we're bold, we're intimidating. And we took that as an adverse, not a compliment, but actually maybe it is a compliment that women who are bold and brave and stand up for themselves against the nurturer, because as you knew from those 2 columns, we're all nurturers, but we want to be independent. We're seen as intimidating, and we find that alarming. So it's interesting. One of the questions I asked the women was, and you can think about it for men, is, do you feel differently when you're not heard by your own gender? So for women, often we feel we're not heard by men, but when we reflected about not being heard by other women, we were quite curious about that as well.
I'm gonna venture out on a limb, and gentlemen, I think we could do thumbs, and if not, add some perspective. But I think the disrespect comes when you're not heard by another man, and the invisibility comes when you're not heard by a woman. For me personally.
Is that agreed by the other men, roughly? No.
All right, cool. So add to the conversation. I mean, I'm just saying, or the masculine energy, right? Like that, I feel both. I have felt disrespect, and I have felt invisible. If a man doesn't listen to me, I'm like, seriously?
No.
What? Right? But if a woman doesn't listen, I'm like, oh, dude, how am I going to be that? Seriously? I don't know how to communicate to a woman. I start feeling invisible and inadequate to have the conversation. So
for me, it's almost the exact opposite of that, personally. So I too resonate with both words very deeply, but I tend to feel more invisible around the really strong alpha ruler, big MM. But women can have far more impact on the disrespect side. And relationships, dating, things like that. When they do something that is rather cold and crass, that hits me square in the feels, and that's where I feel disrespected. Whereas men, I find, because as men we're hardwired for respect. That is one of our core things is around the masculine. We tend to actually treat each other with respect. It's the old story. You get into a fight, beat each other up, then go for a beer. It's all good.
I think you just changed my mind, Curtis.
Okay, so what's an interesting reflection is the shadow side, which affects our emotions. So whether it's getting angry or disappearing or fighting back or arguing or disrespect or invisibility, these are all negative energies in our life. So how much do we understand the other person that we're with? So when it's men to men or women to women, there's a different energy. And there's a lot, if we look at those, the nurture side to the protector side, there's no direct answer, but it's about listening to ourselves. So we've got, I just want to go back to look at a different question. And let's just look at this for a breakout. Is we did this one, what do you feel when you're not heard? So disrespected, invisible. The women felt that they, when they're not heard, they get very frustrated. They feel sad when people think they're intimidating, when they're just being clearly in their own space. So why do conversations fail? Everything we're looking at is about the light side, the lighthouse, the dark side, the energy, the archetype. We react differently, each one of us. So let's, Angela, put us in random groups, hopefully mixed, so that there's 3 in a group, 3 or 4 in a group. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. I want you to look at remembering your archetype. When do conversations fail? What is the key? Why do they fail? And obviously, how do we then turn them around? Because that's the whole point. Remember, magical conversation is without anger, without coercion, without judgment. So when do they fail? Is it because we're just too different, as we've discussed before? How do we cope with this? Really, how did that feel to have that discussion? Did it feel good because you were in a mixed group? There are so many parts to it, but in the group that I was in, the reason that things fail, I believe it is about a personal responsibility. Doesn't mean to say we have to agree with everybody. So in the situation where, as women, we felt that, men, you felt that you were invisible, and the women felt that we were getting angry when we're not heard. It's how do we bring this together? It's a bit like, how can we be bipartisan? How can we develop that narrative and conversation? Just to bring us to, if Dawn, if you have to go now, Dawn. Yeah, well, one of the things we've got more time here. One of the things I just wanted to share with all of you is that we're we're wanting to publish the research. We're still working on how to bring that together, and our research group will be meeting in between this and the next month session. But your views are very important, all of you. And when we produce anything, we want to know your views on it. So we will connect all the thoughts that come out today. But if anybody needs to go because of the time, please do. But we're here for another half an hour just to do some reflections on the different groups.
I just Chris said something really interesting just before we were cut off in our youth, and it's about being present. If you're in a group, in a conversation with a number of people, like we were then, he said, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Chris, perhaps you could say what you said.
Okay, I'll chime in. Thank you. It's about, as we're present, I don't even have to say any words to contribute and communicate. You know, if it's a didactic one-on-one, then I have a responsibility to engage and draw people out. But if I'm in a group of other people, for me, effective communication is letting other people communicate and holding the space of active listening. That was an interesting distinction I just made for myself. And thanks for bringing it up, Don.
That's absolutely fine, because I think that it's, for me, that is very true in terms of you're hearing all of the different voices, and for me that's what's really important, is being present and hearing the different voices so that everybody feels that they're respected, that they're visible.
Yes.
And that their contribution allowed you space to think, and we came up with further ideas.
Yes.
In the space. So that was good.
I love that. That is really good. Thank you so much, because I absolutely agree, Chris. And I think, you know, just holding the space is essentially what a magical conversation is, as well as saying words that contribute into the space. And the thing to remember is that the space is the space between us. So it's between me and one other person, or several, or all of you. The space, even though we're on a Zoom call, which is a different space to a round table space, a space where we feel the physical energy, it's still honoring the space where the words land in, and doing always the proactive listening from our hearts. Because you might say, well, my ears are here, but how do I listen from my heart? And that's what Chris is alluding to, is being present to the energy of the words. Thank you, Dawn. I really, really appreciate that. If you need to leave us, we will miss you, but that's fine. Anybody who needs to go.
Grandparenting responsibility, I'm afraid.
I know that's good. We're grandparents and mothers and women and entrepreneurs and everything, all of us. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks ever so much, all of you. Bye. Bye.
Who would like to give feedback from another group? Because I'd be interested to know.
Curtis, you had some feedback earlier, no?
I'd happily jump in, but I actually see Carolyn waving her hand. So I'd like to do ladies first, please.
Ladies first.
Sorry,
that's very kind.
I'd like to make an observation first, in that really uncharacteristically for me, in groups I don't know, I have been uncharacteristically vocal. Normally I sit back and watch what's going on and what I can feel is going on. So it's almost like a safety thing, because I've been perceived as being very strong in groups before. Sometimes I have been attacked for it. Obviously, I don't like getting attacked. So I now have this way of just seeing what's kind of going on, which doesn't always serve very well if you're in somewhere and you've got to do something quickly. What was really nice, I think there was a psychological shift in me, knowing that all the people in this group have in some way at different levels been looking at all these different things between male and female. And therefore I didn't feel that I needed to be restrained in that way. So I'd like to thank you all very much for that, especially to, because when you're in a smaller group, sometimes you can feel a bit put on a spot, but so thank you to Adolfo and Curtis and Inga for that, so thank you.
That's what the space is about. Thank you, Caroline. What another group? Who was in? Who was another group? Curtis, did you have a different group? No. Sorry. Who was the?
I was the same. I was the same group.
Okay, sorry. Richard, which group were you in?
I was with Angela, Boris, and Kate. Is there something specific you'd like us to talk about?
Your reflection on the question and your group.
Okay. We talked a little bit about balance, by which I mean the masculine and feminine balance, gender within a group, how many people are actually talking. And that, for me, personally affects my visibility and you talked about personal responsibility and willingness to speak. Angela joined us a little later than the other three of us, and so we started with a group of three, and that made me feel personally a little bit uncomfortable. But as soon as Angela joined us and we became 2 men and 2 women, I felt more comfortable. So we talked about the need for comfort, or the influence of comfort in conversations, and also the need for, or the presence or lack of facilitation of the conversation. So if somebody is being silent and we sense they might be feeling disrespected or invisible, the leader or facilitator of that conversation perhaps needs to draw out a contribution from them. Perhaps Kate or Angela or Boris might have something else to say.
That's good.
I think we also spoke around the idea of outcomes and understanding the outcomes of the other people in the conversation. And I think that once the outcome was focused on that person's own agenda or what they were trying to accomplish, they check out of the rest of the conversation. Meaning if they have their own perspective and they want to make sure that that perspective is taking over the conversation, they don't care any longer about what other people's points of view might be. The conversation kind of ends for everyone, because nobody can feel connected to the rest of the conversation. So it's understanding each person's outcome when they have a shared outcome and everybody's trying to come to a conclusion or a decision around something, it seems to work fine. But if somebody comes to the table with their own agenda and they want to be right, regardless of what other opinions might be in the room, the conversation falls apart. Hopefully I explained that okay.
Who else was in your group? Was that Kate?
Yeah, Kate.
Because I'd be interested in Kate's view as well, because that's it's kind of where conversations close down when there's an outcome desired.
That was beautifully facilitated, Richard and Boris. You saying about the outcome is very important. Why are you talking? What together? Is it just to pass the time, or is it a meeting to do it? The outcome, and not one person having to be right regardless of everybody else, about the balance needed and the fact of that it needs direction and facilitation, otherwise it can be aimless, but from a common purpose. The listening bit is very important. And I would say that from a lifetime experience. I'm a trained listener. But what I find, say, for example, with a lot of the young one, they don't know what they don't know. And they're very vocal and get up there. But that has the effect until now, and more recently, of making me holding back, not contributing, not speaking, because I want to hear what they have to say. If it's worthwhile, I listen, but a lot of it isn't. And I hate wasting precious life and precious time. So it's just all of those. And then now I'm learning is to have magical conversation. Well, have you had thought of this and thought of that? But it's a skill. It is an art of conversation.
Thank you. So Angela, you were in that group as well.
Yes. Oh gosh, it's really hardly anything to add.
Okay.
My teammates have said it all. Honestly, I can't think of anything else.
Okay.
But one thing that we pointed out is the importance of magical conversations, like Kate was saying, and in relation to the outcomes that Boris was mentioning, how important it is to that the three entities of I, you, and we as separate and as a whole.
Yeah.
And when that wholeness doesn't come into that conversation, that's where that conversation goes south.
Yeah, and that word wholeness is really important. So remember, all of you, the lighthouse, you imagine the lighthouse is grounded. The lighthouse is solid at the baseline. The lighthouse is unlikely to collapse unless it was hit by a gun or an explosion. Even a wild sea keeps the lighthouse grounded because it's in the rock. So that's the root chakra, the basic. But as it goes up to the light, as we express our light in our messages, whether they are geared to business outcomes or some kind of target, it's about embracing everybody. So it's interesting in that group, because I would say in my experience that Boris is more masculine male and Richard is more philosopher, feminine male, and magician, Kate, and magician stroke sovereign Angela, very different mixtures in there. That it comes together when you have a vision. So remember that the all-seeing eye, which is the I see before the light at the top of the lighthouse, is our third eye of vision. Is the real synergy is embracing everybody. And it's the combination of all the different types that make the lighthouse shine its light, which is equality, is harmony, is a life worth living for. Did we have a fourth group? Have I missed somebody?
Yes, we did. Let's see.
So there was the group I was in with Marty and Knut and Adrian.
That's your group. Is your group, Pauline?
Okay.
Your group is missing.
Sorry. Is there any reflection that my group would like to share? Marty or Knut or Adrian, is there any anything you'd just like to share? Any one of you?
Yeah, I would just love to share the feeling of solace that I personally have achieved in making it possible amongst the human race to not care so much about being disrespected, not heard, or not listened to. Now, of course, that includes being ignored. I think, we all deal with that every day of the week, whether it's through children, spouses, family members, work, people at work, people in contracts, clients. What I try to do is remove myself from them as soon as possible. I think that's not groundbreaking. I think anybody does that. But the one thing that has given me tremendous solace on earth and my limited amount of time here amongst the humans is, one, of course, my particular religious belief with my God is they could actually care less about what the humans think and do. rich or poor, and some of the diabolical people on earth. But as far as my legacy on earth amongst the humans and being heard, I've secured it now at this point strong enough with 9 books that I've published that it will be heard from now until the end of time. So I really think, you know, since about the 1500s when the printing press was created, publishing a book, it therapeutically provides a human with so much solace. And if you get 2 or 3 or 5 underneath your belt, you just start to therapeutically not really care what some clown ass has to say, or you're this or you're that, and what you need to do, and let me tell you a little something, and they pull their pants down and show it all over you 4 or 5 times. You actually begin to not care. You know, it's like I actually have given up. And Steve Harvey, I'll just end in saying Steve Harvey is always talking about how he has little to no time to spend on people's opinions about him and what he is or isn't doing in life and what he needs to learn how to do because he should have done this. And he's really always hammers that home, like I have little to no time about other people's opinions about me.
Well,
Steve Harvey.
absolutely. And I think it is that classic, Marty, that, you know, and your opinion of me has got nothing, was it your opinion of me has got nothing to do with me, is that it's by understanding ourselves. One of the things I'm just going to invite you, and thank you, Marty, is before we get to the end of time, is that for all of you, if you would like to put in the chat line who you are and what you do, should everybody want to share with you, because there are some amazing projects here that we are all moving towards. And one of our goals, Angela and I and Philip and Dawn and the others, we've all talked about this, is how do we share these messages, the Lighthouse messages, out to the world as we really evolve the narrative. And the narrative is about men and women and different types of men and women, and more understanding of that fundamental, if you like, the gender dynamics intelligence sits at the baseline that the Lighthouse grows its roots from. So each of us, how do we do that? One of the things I just want to share with you, and I work I work towards real synergy in the business world, where I believe, and I've had long conversations with many of you about this, that we will automatically see men and women of all diversities coming together to share how we build a future worth living for. And that all the arguments that occur at the moment become less and hopefully all disappear. Knut is working on a new ecosystem, developing communities in his Tuscany backdrop there. I know that Marty works a lot across the world with many, many different communities. Boris and I work together looking at businesses in crisis. Philip and Angela and myself and the team look at cultures, workplace cultures of greatness. I am starting a program which Adriana, who is sitting there from Canterbury, is going to join me on Friday. And this is a program for professional women who are either coaches or career professional women. So I would love all of you to keep that in mind as we go forward, because I believe that if you think about what we've discovered today, men feeling disrespected or invisible, women getting angry because they're not heard, not feeling that they can lean in at the table, not being heard for their good ideas. That's a lot of what has come up over the months, that women feel patronized when they're in a workplace trying to be the nurturer. All of these things come together. And so I want to develop my program so that we can harness the narrative for top women and all of you, and for men, so that we're talking on the same playing field. and that when we talk about equity and equality, balance, harmony, integrity, we understand what each archetype is saying on those issues and reacting in certain ways. So we've got a few thumbs. Yeah, Richard's retired, but he also does a fabulous thing called 7 Words. I would definitely encourage people to investigate that. And I know, Inga, you work in the field of gender diversity, increasingly with corporations across the world and from UK. Yes, is that right? So I just wanted to make sure that we're all aware of all the great people. I haven't mentioned everybody, but you're all great. So just make sure you put your things in there. Now, what I want to ask before we finish is to I just want to briefly go back to here, just to, when we were talking about you as different archetypes, and that's really what our research is developing, is how do these archetypes recognize their masculine and feminine energy? There is a physicality to this, but generally men are more task focused. There's a lot of evidence from Barbara Annis and lots of people who have studied the neurology of the male brain. It's more linear, more task oriented, and the women is more circular. So just remember the baseline of what we're talking about, that really honoring and respecting that women do work in a very and circling, nurturing way. And men are designed to be either or and much more linear. Now, of course, when we mix it together, we have magicians who use a lot of masculine energy, and we have philosophers who use a lot of feminine energy. And of course, we're all intelligent and wise human beings, so we can use all the different aspects. It's how much we know what we're doing at the time we're doing it. So to remind ourselves that knowing ourselves is key, the lighthouse. Tuning into others, making sure that all the levels of our chakras are aligned, so that when we shine our light, it's done in our truth, even if we're talking with people who have very polar opposite views. And in that, we can then create our new narrative. What we're still doing.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you share it? Can you share the lighthouse again, please? Because for a lot of us, it was the first time seeing it. Okay,
let me find it very quickly. We can do that. Yeah, I can do anything, it says here. Okay, you mean this one? So the lighthouse is around, firstly, knowing our core root chakra, our identity, understanding that the sacral area is how I feel, and it's moving into the solar plexus, the energy center. And then, of course, our heart center.
I can't see your screen. You're not sharing, Pauline.
What?
No, you're not sharing.
Yeah, we're imagining it in our head.
Oh, okay. You're imagining it. Here we are.
It's really pretty, but.
That was a good explanation, don't you think?
There you go.
Thank you. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so there's identity, our perceptions, and of course our perceptions have been created over a lifetime of stereotypes and biases, but how do we shift our perceptions in our feelings? When we look at our solar plexus, our energy, we move into our love chakra, our heart chakra for relations, and then into our communication, our throat chakra. And then our third eye chakra, which is around the all-seeing eye. So eye-seeing is about our vision, our visual beyond our eyesight, is how do we sense other people. And as we go into the crown chakra, which is our total alignment, it's about our understanding. As Dawn referenced to Stephen Covey, seek to understand in order to be understood. And that's where we're referencing real synergy as being knowing our own lighthouse and what the message is, and making sure that we understand I, the other person, you, and we. And we do this with no judgment and no anger, no coercion, but also with an open mind, a willing heart, and authentic truth. And another, you know, there are many words that go around this, but responsibility, making that choice to own our responsibility and keep our energy centered on who we are. As Marty referenced, you know, it isn't about somebody else's opinion. It's about our opinion, but understanding the other lighthouses around us. So on the sea of turmoil, the lighthouse is there not to rescue people from themselves, it's to rescue them from their situation. So the boats that are struggling in the storm, they see the lighthouse, so they know not to go there because it will crash on a rock. But do they have safe passage to where they're going? Do they know the ship that they're in? Do they know how it's running? So if those are businesses or people or homes or communities or countries, that's really what that is about. Is that okay? And just to remind you that when you know your archetype, is to remember that your baseline as a man is to be much more either or, as a woman to be more circular and. We had that right at the beginning, but the magician has often a lot of logic in her head, and the philosopher has many strands of feminine in her head. But we all have all of it. It's our choice to remember to be in that value creation cycle. So the value creation cycle is core to everything that we work on. Know yourself, know others, and create the new dialogue. This can refer to families. If you think about it, families have lots of different people in them. Let's go back to the businesses have a mission to make money, but to be sustainable in a new marketplace. So how they tune into their employees and how they tune into customers is going to be really important. There'll be no market brand in the create a new business if we don't know ourselves and we don't know each other. So this is reflection on a new world that we live in, which is now very geared to remote working, hybrid teams, yes, maybe going out into face-to-face soon. We don't know, even though we have vaccines and going back to normal, we're still in a world which for the perceivable future year, at least, is going to be pretty challenged. So I just want to share with you now is that what I'm looking at doing, and I'm starting, as I said, my program on Friday with Adriana. I really want to focus on women first and then men. So I want your help is that if we understand the intelligent women of the world, we still haven't got it right yet out there. I want to change the narrative for those people who are willing to do so. So I am running this program. It's over 6 weeks, and I want classes of 8 because there's a power in the power of 8. I also run sessions to solve difficult problems, one-on-one. So if anybody has any referrals from me, I'd be really appreciative of that. And I'm working with different aspects of business with Corporate Heart International and with my CEO, creating energy circles, conversational circles, surveying tensions, where people are at, all of those things. The main thing is it's about getting the conversation together and remembering that heart and creating something that will be long-term. What I would invite all of you to do is to help us in our research team as we produce the pieces of research. We want places that we can send this out to. I want to talk to all of you about that. I'll talk to you, Marty, about that because I know your networks are wide and far, and I'm sure Inga as well. You do a lot of work in the gender diversity field. Once we get the research together, which will not be a boring academic document, that's our goal, it will be a lively piece of knowledge from the 9 months that we've all been coming together with video clips of what people are doing. And the last but not least, I'd like to interview all of you individually so we can get some sharing from a personal point of view about the change that you see in the world coming together because men and women work together in a more synergetic way. And that is my plea to you all, because we can't do this on our own. I can't do this on my own, and I plan to leave a legacy in the world. And I'm willing to stay for another 30 years, but it means I'll be 102 by then. So I have no idea what the world will be like.
Pauline, I'm going to tell you the same thing I told my mother. You need to live to 300.
No.
This world needs women like you. So tough shit. Figure it out. We have the technology. So.
Okay, and before we leave, I must take a photograph. So if you could all smile at the camera. And it's not working. Why is it not working?
I'll do it.
Will you do it? Yes, please. Smile at the camera, Angela will take it.
Got it.
For some reason, it works sometimes and not others on my computer. It's really important. Oh, sorry. It's really important that we have these sessions, and I'm really grateful, and your feedback is very well respected. Thank you all. The next one is on May the 10th.
May 10th.
Is it May the 10th? Have I got that right? Yes, May the 10th.
Mother's Day, Mexico. So
the research group will be meeting next Monday, but the bigger meeting will be on May the 10th.
There's actually the whole schedule in the Eventbrite page. I came across it when I registered for this session for the rest of the year.
I put the different dates on there. The dates are all listed. It's always the second Monday of the month.